the Russians just put out a document to erase Ukrainian identity in the occupied territories. It is Thursday, November 27th. That's Thanksgiving in the United States. My name is Darren Gerdes. I'm just a professor trying to provide context in the war in Ukraine. I'll be here on Thanksgiving. I'll be here on Christmas. I'll be here on New Year's. I'll be here on my birthday. Until this horrible war is over. Okay, so let's start here and look at what's going on with this new draft document. This is from the British Intelligence Update. It just came out a couple of days ago. The Russian authorities, I mean, the update is today, but the document came out a couple of days ago. The Russian authorities have been directed to build Russian identity and increase the use of Russian language in the territory it illegally occupies in Ukraine, according to a decree signed by President Putin, published 25 November 2025. The document, titled Strategy of Russia's National Policy in the Period to 2036, which sounds kind of innocuous, highlights a continued Russification policy forcing Russian language, identity, and culture onto the residents of sovereign Ukrainian territory. The policy forms part of Russia's long-standing efforts to expatriate Ukrainian culture and identity and delegitimize Ukrainian statehood. Russia now defines both occupied and unoccupied Ukrainian territory in the Ukrainian Oblast of Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhzhia, Kherson, as well as Crimea as being part of the Russian Federation. The document's reference to these sovereign Ukrainian oblasts as historical territories of the Russian state emphasizes the overtly imperialist aspect of Russia's continuing efforts to subjugate Ukraine. They're not going anywhere. They're coming forward. They're going to try to win militarily, and they're doing this simultaneously trying to erase. And that word erase is not my language. Here from Euromaidan Press, Putin just signed a 23 blueprint for erasing Ukrainian identity in occupied territories. I know some people will go, hey, wait a minute, Gerdes, what are you doing? This erasing Ukrainian identity, you're just going too far. This is not my language. Section 26 calls both the 2014 Crimea annexation and 2022 seizure of the 4 oblasts reunification of historical territories. That's the mentality here. Section 46 mandates counteracting neo-Nazism and eliminating anti-Russian propaganda, which is to say anything that's not pro-Russian. All right, so they formalize what human rights groups have documented for years. It is now illegal to be Ukrainian in the occupied territories. This is what peace looks like from the Russian perspective. So that's just where we are right now. Okay, NATO, meanwhile, has prepared a plan to deploy 800,000 troops to Russia's borders, but why that would matter, I'm not exactly sure. 800,000 troops to Russia's borders, but they're not going to do anything once they're on the borders. I mean, that's what this amounts to. There's a video not working for some people, so Anton Gurashenko re-uploaded it, and there are bits and pieces of all this video all around here. This is Putin talking about how the idea that the Europeans are upset that we might invade Europe. Of course we're not going to invade Europe. Let's listen. Because it's one thing to say in general terms that Russia has no intention of attacking Europe. To us, this sounds ridiculous, right? We never intended to. But if they want to hear it from us, fine. We can put it down in writing. No problem. It's just that there are people all over there that are a bit out of touch, or they're crooks who want to get something out of this, talking about the European leaders, or crooks wanting to get something out of it. They tell their public, their own citizens, that Russia is preparing to attack Europe and that they must urgently strengthen their defense capabilities. Of course, there's no such thing. We're not going to attack Europe. Maybe they're serving the interest of private defense companies, or maybe they're trying to boost their domestic ratings against the backdrop of their miserable and economic, social issues, with the things that are going on in Europe. Okay, it's hard to say what drives them, but from our point of view, it's complete nonsense. It's a lie. Well, okay, but you're already in Europe. You're already attacking Europe. It's just Ukraine is part of Europe, right? And you put it down in writing. You put it down in writing before. Didn't change anything. Meanwhile, Russia is churning out missiles faster than they can launch them, stockpiling a deadly arsenal of long-range weapons that could deliver a knockout blow to Ukraine, according to the top U.S. negotiator. Okay, so that's what's going on there. And this is what Secretary Dan Driscoll, he warned European diplomats that Russia is stockpiling long-range weapons or long-range missiles, using it as leverage to push Trump's peace plan. Hey, look, they're building this up. You better sign on to this peace plan now. Like that's the way that Driscoll is rolling. So yeah. Okay, he claimed the growing arsenal could soon overwhelm Ukraine's air defenses. Critics say this flips U.S. policy on its head, pressuring the victim to settle while the aggressor retools for more war. Okay. This is interesting as well. ABC News just came out with this earlier this morning. Russia ready to fight to the last Ukrainian, Putin says. Now, that's not rhetoric about Ukraine being willing to fight to the last Ukrainian, or America being willing to fight to the last Ukrainian. Putin saying, if Ukraine troops leaves the territory, then military action will stop. Of course, you can invert that as well. If Russia just left the territory, it would all be over. If they won't leave, then we will achieve that by armed force. He's not planning on going anywhere. He's not settling or suing for peace. The president said Russia was ready to, in principle, to fight to the last Ukrainian. So, I mean, it's on. He's not suing for peace. ISW says the Kremlin officials are setting conditions to reject any peace deal unless it gives Russia everything it wants. Deputy Foreign Minister said that there can be no concessions and warned the war would continue if the talks stalled. That's the Deputy Foreign Minister of Russia. Here it is, a longer version from the ISW. Kremlin officials continue setting these conditions and to reject any peace deal that does not concede to all of Russia's maximalist demands. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Ryabkov stated on November 26 that there can be no talk of any concessions or surrender any of the key aspects of Russia's challenges with the Ukraine in response to the U.S. peace plan. Ryabkov stated that Russia is, quote, prepared to achieve its stated goals in negotiations, referring to Russia's long-held and oft-repeated demands, and noted that Russia will continue its war in Ukraine if there are any setbacks in negotiations. Ryabkov reiterated that Russia's position has not changed and invoked the alleged understanding that the United States and Russia reached at the August 2025 Alaska summit. I don't know what the understanding is, but they keep talking about it. Here's Ryabkov. Let's listen. We welcome the Trump administration's efforts.
Sensible and reasonable.
Sorry, I was reading over Greg Terry. He translated this for me. I was just getting used to reading it.
The conflict, and there are different versions of plans floating around with different points, but there can be no talk of concessions or abandoning our approaches to the key issues that face us in lieu of the special military operation. I emphasize again that the various elements that were represented in Anchorage, the compromised solutions, our president spoke about this. These are the foundations that we will use when examining and continuing the discussions, different versions that are currently being talked on the table or future. It's just a matter of diplomacy and political technique, not something that can be discussed online, because these are extremely serious matters currently in focus.
Okay, so that's what we know from Ryabkov. They keep going back to Alaska, and they're talking about like they gained all this ground. I want to show you this map. For those who are trying to hype up the topic of how Russia is about to finally conquer Ukraine, unless a peace agreement is signed immediately, here's what the front line has changed like over the last 12 months, highlighted in red. This is a change. That's it. I mean, it's unbelievably small. Like Russia, you're supposed to be this huge, like the best army in the world. This is what the change has been over the last year. That's it. Okay. Ukraine, by the way, Michael McFaul reminds us, is a country in Europe. We never intended to attack Europe. Yeah. But you're attacking Europe. You are. And if you put it down on paper, it doesn't matter because you put it down on paper before. And what will happen when Europe is being attacked by a conquered, let's say, I'm not wishing this. I don't want this. Let's say Russia conquers Ukraine and then use Ukrainians, forces them into their military, Russifies them, and then attacks Europe. What do you think is going to happen then? How's that going to go? Turkey's defense ministry says it's open to sending troops to Ukraine as part of an international mission if the conditions are met: a full ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, a clearly defined peacekeeping mandate, and a fair division of responsibilities among participating nations, and Turkey's on board. Moldovan authorities have begun revoking citizenship of ethnic Russians with Moldovan citizenship that have joined the Russian army. Okay, that's good that they're starting to do that. Latvia is considering dismantling railway lines to Russia. The Latvian government is seriously weighing the option of fully dismantling the railway tracks leading to Russia. The reason is straightforward: tensions on Latvia's eastern border remain a long-term concern. The authorities are looking at radical solutions. Removing the tracks is one of the options now being prepared. So they're getting the message that something's going to happen. Europe is now seriously considering what was once unthinkable: a retaliatory response against Russia, according to Politico. Following a series of Russian provocations, including drone incursions, GPS jamming, acts of sabotage, the EU is discussing possible countermeasures such as cyber attacks on the key Russian infrastructure, sudden NATO exercises near Russia's border, and information operations aimed at Russian citizens. They're starting to talk about it, but they're only talking about it. That's the problem. Here's Garry Kasparov. He's in agony looking at this, and it's a little loud, so I'm warning you, it's going to be a little bit louder than otherwise. Let's listen to him.
And yeah, how can we seriously discuss that Ukraine will have to give up fortifications that are saving Europe? We're celebrating NATO. NATO is not strong. NATO doesn't exist. It's a fake. It's NATO, 4 letters. The reason you are still sitting here and celebrating it, Ukraine is dying every minute. It's a massive sacrifice. If not for Ukraine standing in front of Russia, Russian tanks would be already in Poland. You all suggested that Ukraine would give up. You offered Zelensky a right, and he said, I don't need right ammunition. 4 years Ukraine is fighting for the whole Europe. NATO was built to fight only one war, not to go to Afghanistan, not to go to Syria, one war to save free Europe from Russian aggression. Ukraine is the only country that is fighting this war, and we're still discussing, should we include them or not?
Isn't that amazing? Ukraine is fighting what NATO was designed to do, is to prevent the spread of Russian aggression. And here we are. All right. Meanwhile, North Korea has made Russian mandatory subject in schools. Compulsory Russian language classes now starting from the 4th grade in North Korea. You don't think something's brewing yet, right? Okay. I saw this and I thought, wow, that's interesting. Putin's afraid of the Ukrainian flag like the devil fears holy water. This is pure absurdity. During Putin's visit to Kyrgyzstan, the Ukrainian embassy was literally hidden behind a giant screen. I'll show you the video in just a moment so you can see it. Okay. The reason the embassy, this is the giant screen here. The reason is the embassy faces the government residence where Putin was being received. They covered it up so that the Ukrainian flag wouldn't make the Kremlin czar foam at the mouth in a fit of rage. Of course, that's commentary, but here is the where Putin was. And you'll see that on the other side of this building, let's go over to the beginning. On the other side of this building, here's the Ukrainian flag and the Ukrainian embassy. And so they put this big screen here so that it couldn't be visible from where Putin was received. How about those apples? Okay, well, that's all, my friends. That's all that I have for you for this video. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. Tell me what you see here, because I just see like this Russification. I see Putin's statements. I don't see any peace anytime soon. What do you see? Put it in the comments below. Thank you for your time, the likes, the shares, and the subscribes, and for being the kind of person who cares about Ukraine.